about to be reacting to alien and stuff, alien conspiracies. I got a couple alien videos. Gonna do this right now, and then a little later I'm gonna do some gaming stuff on Rivals. But yeah, just time to get the little tinfoil hats on. Oh, hold on. Yeah, I had to turn that off. Yeah, so I'm not sure if y'all can hear that because the fan was on, but we're about to do alien conspiracy stuff, all in the tinfoil hat wearing right now. I'm gonna start in the middle between dark and creepy and like light with these stories. So we're gonna go with the Joe Rogan one first.
These are 5 of the craziest alien theories in Joe Rogan Experience history. Starting on the Joe Rogan Experience number 1762 featuring Josh Zepps. Now first off, Josh Zepps tries to explain just how long the history of human civilization is by putting it in a book. He says that if there were an 800-page book that goes through our whole 160 million years of history, then roughly each page would be about 200 years of history. If you opened that 800-page book to any random page, roughly the same thing would be happening in history as the previous pages. Basically, people are just wandering around. Some people are learning how to use fire, some people are learning how to use metals, but roughly the same sort of things are going on throughout the book. It would only be at the last few pages of the book where we started to create nuclear bombs, we went to space, the evolution of the internet, vehicles, etc. All of this stuff would be in the last few pages of this whole 800-page book about the history of human civilization.
If an alien who knew nothing about anything took that 800-page book, they'd be like, page 233 is roughly the same as page 7.
This game, you're not ready for it.
722.
Yeah.
But they'd get to the end and they'd be like, holy what's going to happen next? Like, I want to read the sequel to this, but I want to read what's 801.
Well, that's when they would keep an eye on us.
Now, Josh Zepps talks about almost as an explanation for why there have been more alien or UFO sightings recently than any other time in the history of human civilization. It's only been recently where things have dramatically changed in human civilization that would be of interest to aliens.
So, you know, when they dropped Fat Man and Little Boy on Japan, that's when UFO sightings started happening all over the globe. There's a giant uptick in UFO sightings. Was it Kenneth Arnold was one of the first, I believe? He's the guy who spotted, I think it's Kenneth Arnold, was the guy that spotted the flying saucers. He was the first one to discuss them as saucer-shaped discs, but they started seeing them all over the place. Like there was encounters in Washington, D.C., and there was...
I've not seen a flying saucer. If niggas seen flying saucers, they let me know. Where were you at?
Encounters over nuclear bases, and where they said that they had shut codes down. And
the first ever UFO sighting in North America goes all the way back to 1639, recorded by a man named John Winthrop, who was the governor of Massachusetts Bay Colony. Winthrop reported seeing a quote-unquote great light in the night sky that hovered, flew, and changed shape. But the term flying saucer didn't become popular until 1947, after a pilot named Kenneth Arnold described seeing a string of 9 unidentified flying objects flying past Mount Rainier in Washington state. After 1947, UFO sightings increased dramatically. Many believe that there is a connection between UFO sightings and nuclear activity, including after the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Since 1945, there have been many UFO sightings in the area around Hiroshima, deeming it a UFO hotspot. Now, going back to the book of the history of human civilization analogy, it's very plausible that something like the creation of the nuclear bomb sparked aliens' interest on human civilization, and that hints why sightings have significantly spiked after World War II.
I don't know if there was alien life, and if there is alien life out there that's aware of us. I don't know if they would intervene, because we don't really do much when we find chimps. The scientific community, the intelligent scientific community doesn't try to interfere with their life and give them guns and this is how you start a fire.
An interesting thing to note is that chimps have noticed that humans exist. Chimpanzees can recognize humans and are aware of our existence. So if aliens are studying humans like humans did to chimps, it's possible that they would never try to intervene. But if that's true, it's also possible that one day we will notice and become aware of extraterrestrial existence.
Like when we train our telescopes on the sky, why isn't there any evidence of little flickering radio waves coming from somewhere? But a possible explanation is the one that you say, which is we're looking for the wrong things. We've only been emitting radio waves for a century, and we might be just about to end that and go into some virtual reality metaverse or something, and maybe we'll meet them all there. Maybe we'll unlock some door of the Zuckerberg multiverse and be like, oh, here are a whole bunch of pre-existing civilizations of aliens who already exist on this platform.
Now, if we think about all of the planets that we know exist just in our solar system and think about their conditions, there are very few of them that could actually support life. Like, for example, there is no conclusive evidence that Mars has ever had life, but there is evidence that suggests it may have been habitable in the past, such as Mars had liquid water and a warmer climate in the past, but still very few of the planets in our solar system could even potentially support life. But going outside of our solar system, it could be very possible that there is a planet similar to Earth, and maybe that planet didn't go through the things that our Earth did, like getting hit by a Mars-sized object that created our moon and asteroid belt, or even things like the Toba volcano, which erupted and nearly wiped out humanity. There could be another place just like Earth that could be way more advanced due to not experiencing things like our Earth and our humanity did.
So let's imagine that there was some sort of a civilization 10,000 years ago, 20,000 years ago that was very advanced and was allowed to advance without any interruption, without nuclear war, without solar flares, without asteroid impacts or supervolcanoes. Maybe they lived in a much more stable climate and they got to a place where they're 1,000,000 years more advanced than us. 1,000,000 years. Imagine what the we're going to be in a
Monday.com's AI blocks are a total game changer.
Excuse me if I find that hard to believe.
You know that llamas are biologically
would look like, nigga, that is too far in the head. 1,000,000 years, my nigga. I'm
1,000,000 years.
Now, if that's the case, and there is a civilization out there that is even a few hundred years more advanced than us, more than likely that civilization wouldn't interfere with us. So if there are aliens out there watching us, that's literally all they are doing, watching us. Theoretically, they are not going to invade us or start killing us. They are simply just studying us.
Like, if you think about what a scientist is, it's someone who wants to observe but sometimes protect. Like we protect endangered species. Activists get together and they say, hey, there's only a few of these birds left. We have to do whatever we can to preserve them. If they have that same mentality about the human race, I think they would have a pretty standoffish attitude and just sort of wait for us to figure it out. And especially if they look at the acceleration of our innovation and this exponential acceleration of technology. And
think about it this way: if there is a civilization out there that is way more advanced than us and has found a way to even find our Earth, more than likely they are a standoffish type of civilization, because if they were a predatory civilization, it's very unlikely that they would have the technology to find us, because there would just be way too many internal conflicts within that civilization. On the JRE MMA show number 107 featuring George St. Pierre, Joe and GSP get into a conversation about aliens and lost knowledge. Now, Joe starts this conversation by briefly talking about Travis Walton's alien abduction story. In 1975, a forestry worker named Travis Walton was allegedly abducted by aliens. Now, the story goes that on November 5th, 1975, Travis Walton and 6 other people that were working with him were driving down a forest road when they saw a lit object above the ground near the roadway. Travis Walton reportedly got out of the truck and ran towards the object, and the object shined.
Oh, that nigga wanted to be abducted. Fuck no. What is that? Nigga ran towards it?
a bright light on him. The 6 other members of Travis's crew drove off in fear, leaving Travis behind. Now, there was a massive search party in place to find Travis, but after the night of November 5th, 1975, Travis was nowhere to be found. And then on November 12th, 7 days after Travis went missing, he placed a collect call to his sister's home from a payphone in Arizona. Now, Travis had claimed that on November 5th, he was abducted by aliens. Now, Travis Walton has shared his story, but a really interesting part of his story is how the aliens communicated with him. Travis claims that the aliens were talking to him, but it wasn't with words. The aliens were communicating with him, and Travis could understand them, but the aliens weren't talking. They were talking to Travis telepathically.
And I think that that's probably the future of communication. Just like you can transmit information from phone to phone, right? You can call people. They're nowhere near you, but you can talk to them. You can send a video to someone. It's going through the air. It's just data, right? It's just information.
Joe Rogan theorizes that the future of communication is telepathy. Now, we can take Travis Walton's story as well as Joe Rogan's theory and bring it back to the previous theory on aliens. If aliens are from an extremely advanced civilization, it could be possible that aliens have figured out how to communicate telepathically. Like Joe Rogan said, we already can transmit information from phone to phone, so it's not outlandish to think that it could be possible to one day communicate with other people just using our minds. There are already a bunch of scientists and researchers who predict that it is going to be possible, so if aliens are even 100 years more advanced than us, they could have figured out how to communicate telepathically, which hints how Travis could understand what they were saying to him without them actually talking. Now, GSP then asks Joe Rogan if he personally believes what people like Travis Walton and Bob Lazar say.
I can't tell for certain, but I believe Bob Lazar. I believe what he's saying is true. I believe he's telling me. Now, Bob, he had one moment where he was passing by a window and he said he saw something that was small and these people were standing over it, and he didn't know if it was an alien or whether it was a form that they were trying, like a doll or something that's supposed to represent the size of an alien or some sort of a model of an alien. But he remembers he looked briefly through a window and he saw something small. He didn't see it move around, didn't see it talk, so he doesn't know what he saw.
Bob Lazar worked at Area 51 Site 4, and one of the problems that Bob Lazar and his team were trying to figure out was how to back engineer UFOs. But the problem with this was that Bob and the scientists working with him were not allowed to communicate with other people outside of the very small group of scientists at Site 4. So obviously it was nearly impossible for the scientists at Site 4 to back engineer UFOs because they couldn't collaborate with other scientific minds. Now, the scientific method requires multiple people to communicate and share ideas, and where Bob Lazar worked at Area 51, he was not allowed to do that.
But my communication with him, I don't know if he was telling me the truth, but he didn't seem deceptive. And he's a brilliant guy.
It's clear he's clearly like borderline genius. You hear him speak, he's very educated. And
some of the things that he talked about came to fruition. Like, one of the things was there was a concept of this thing called element 115, right? Yeah. Now, that was not really proven until the 2000s, or somewhere in the 2000s. They used a particle collider and created this thing where it was a very unstable, very short-lived particle.
Bob Lazar claims that wherever aliens are from, they have found out a way to utilize a stabilized version of this element 115, and that is how they have propelled themselves. Now, going back to GSP's original question, if whether or not Bob Lazar seemed credible and seemed honest, Joe talks about how a lot of things that Bob Lazar was explaining lined up to what David Fravor experienced. Now, David Fravor is a retired naval pilot and commander of VFA 41. Now, in 2004, David Fravor reported seeing a tic-tac shaped UFO over the Pacific Ocean. David Fravor saw this object that had no visible propulsion system and watched this object go from about 80,000 feet above sea level all the way back down to 1 in 1 second. Joe explains that whatever David Fravor saw lines up to what Bob Lazar described seeing at his time working at Area 51.
He experienced this thing move in that same direction, that same way, where there was no visible propulsion system, but they tracked this thing going from 80,000 feet above sea level to 1 in 1 second. So that's the amount of time that it takes radar to track this. So it might have been less than a second. This thing traveled from 80,000 feet to 1,000.
No time.
To 1 feet.
On the JRE Fight Companion from February 17th, 2019, Eddie Bravo shares a very interesting theory about space being fake. Eddie Bravo starts explaining that anybody who is a flat Earth believer also believes that space is fake. Eddie Bravo clarifies by saying that it doesn't mean that space and the stars are fake. He means that all of the information we have about space is either wrong or faked. But Eddie explains that there is a reason for why people would lie about space.
The goal has always been for the most powerful emperors is a one world government. They always wanted a one world government. All the Roman emperors, they try to figure out, they try to do different combinations. How about and they would fall, and a new emperor would come and go, you know what, I'm going to
world domination in other words.
I'm not going to let my soldiers get married. That way we'll have a stronger army. They have different philosophies. Everyone believed different, but they all wanted a one world government. There's no way to have a one world government. Nobody's into that.
Right.
Not even other rulers from small countries are like, one world government, that's going to put me out of a job. One world government. People that don't know about politics don't want a one world government. Sure. There's no way.
Data annotation is wonderful.
You can work from your phone, your laptop, or desktop.
It's actually interesting work. Like, I don't know if I ever thought about that shit either. They must be off of something on the Joe Rogan podcast a lot. They got a lot of out of the box ideas. I feel like a nigga has never even thought about. Like, you gotta be high off of like some shrooms or like some type of Native American drug or something.
Way you're gonna sell the one world government. It's impossible.
Eddie Bravo explains that the only way that people could make a one world government work would be to make every single human embrace it. Now, the way that Eddie Bravo thinks that someone could make the whole entire human population want a one world government would be
is if there was some extraterrestrial threat from up above us. That would be the only way to have everyone embrace the one world government. They all knew that for years.
But it didn't work
That's
so far.
the plan. They could never make it work. They didn't have the technology 500 years ago. The Vatican knew about it. They wanted it. And you go to the Vatican, you see paintings of like UFOs with aliens in them. And back when I used to believe in UFOs, but before I figured out that UFOs they want us to believe in UFOs. They're preparing us for a fake alien invasion. That's always been the plan. A one world government. The only way to do it is to get us to embrace it. And the only way to embrace it is from an alien attack.
Now, this is actually a really interesting theory when you think about it. It may sound crazy that what we know about space is all...
Okay, I think I understand what this nigga is saying now. They saying niggas on the earth making it seem like there's aliens. So they make niggas think that it's gonna be a fake alien invasion. Right? But really it's humans. And they doing that so they can pretty much fake the alien invasion and create the one world government, because they won't accept it unless they think that the government's too strong for them to overtake by like brute force or shit. So they saying that all the space shit we've been seeing is fake. Is it over the flat earth
faked
shit, bro?
and that the only reason we are given information about space is to have us scared of an extraterrestrial threat so that we can embrace a one world government? But it's honestly really not that far-fetched. In Ronald Reagan's address to the United Nations in New York City on September 21st, 1987, Reagan claimed that if there were an alien invasion, all of our differences worldwide would vanish.
Perhaps we need some outside universal threat to make us recognize this common bound. I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
In 1966, American sociologists and political activists Richard Cloward and Francis Fox Piven created a political strategy known as the Cloward-Piven strategy. Now, this strategy aimed to utilize militant anti-poverty groups to facilitate a political crisis by overloading the welfare system via an increase in welfare claims, forcing the creation of a system of guaranteed minimum income, and redistributing income through the federal government. environment. So in more simple terms, the 4-stepped Cloward-Pivotin strategy is to 1. Overload a system, 2. Create mass panic and hysteria as the system is overloaded, 3. Oversee the destruction of the system, and 4. Replace the former system with a new system as the only solution. Now, according to Eddie Bravo's theory, that's exactly what a fake alien invasion would do. There would be a quote-unquote alien invasion that would create mass panic and hysteria, and then the only way to stop the alien invasion would be to all work together as humans, and then one person steps up to lead the world, and in return it would create a one-world government, as we would see how well everybody in the world worked together under one leader. On the Joe Rogan Experience number 1233 featuring Brian Cox, Joe Rogan asks Brian his thoughts on aliens and if he believes that there is another life form out there. Brian Cox is a physicist and musician who is the professor of particle physics in the School of Physics and Astronomy at the University of Manchester. Brian Cox has received many awards for his efforts to popularize science.
Yeah, I think there must be. Even in the solar system, I would not be surprised if we find microbes.
I'm down on my luck, she's turning a page. I heard that nigga was making music. I'm falling in love, she's running away, am I crawling
on Mars or on some of the moons of Jupiter or Saturn where there's liquid water.
Like Europa.
Yeah. And the reason is, if you think about, the reason I think that, and it's a guess, is because if you look at the history of life on Earth, then, so Earth formed and it was just there was no life, it was a ball of rock. And almost as soon as it cooled down, we see evidence of life. So certainly 3.8 billion years ago, possibly even further back than that, we see evidence of life on Earth.
Brian Cox explains that when you get the conditions that are naturally present on the surface of the oceans, then complex carbon chemistry spontaneously happens. We know almost 100% that life began on Earth. You could argue that life came from space or something like that, but we are almost 100% sure that life began on Earth. So we know what the conditions were like on Earth to lead to the origins of life. Well, those same conditions were present on Mars around 4 billion years ago, and the same conditions are present on Europa, which is an icy moon of Jupiter, and those conditions are present today. Now, Europa is a very interesting place because it's considered the most promising place in our solar system to support extraterrestrial life. For example, Europa's subsurface ocean. Europa has a thick ice shell covering a global subsurface ocean, which is believed to contain more than twice the water of Earth's oceans. Liquid water is a key ingredient for life as we know it. Also, the energy sources on Europa. Europa experiences strong gravitational interactions with Jupiter, creating tidal forces that generate heat. This heat could keep the ocean liquid and potentially power hydrothermal vents similar to those on Earth's deep ocean floor where life thrives without sunlight. If Europa has hydrothermal vents on its ocean floor similar to Earth's deep sea vents, they could provide heat and nutrients necessary for life. On Earth, ecosystems thrive around these vents despite the absence of sunlight.
I don't see that there's anything special. Life is just chemistry, and the idea that geochemistry becomes biochemistry is not fanciful because it happened here. So I think that given the same conditions, it would be surprising to me if the same thing didn't happen, in that life begins. So I that's one of the, to test that is one of the great frontiers of science now. It's one of the great challenges, which is why another reason we're interested in Mars, because we know those conditions were there. We know there were what's called hydrothermal vent systems on the floors of oceans on Mars 3.8 or 4 billion years ago. So it would be good to know if what I've said is right. And the way we find out is to find life or evidence of past life.
Now, Joe Rogan asks Brian Cox what his thoughts are on the octopus possibly being from another planet. In 2018, a paper was published titled Cause of the Cambrian Explosion, Terrestrial or Cosmic, by a group of scientists. In this paper, the authors explored the idea of panspermia, the hypothesis that life, or at least its building blocks, may have originated from space. They specifically suggested that octopuses and their cephalopod relatives might have evolved due to extraterrestrial influences. sources. One of the more controversial claims was that octopus genetic complexity and their unique traits, such as their advanced nervous systems, problem-solving abilities, and ability to edit their RNA, could be explained by the arrival of alien genetic material via comets or even frozen fertilized octopus eggs from space.
But with the octopus, I hadn't heard that. But the thing is that the octopus is still extremely similar biologically to us. I mean, the differences are negligible.
Yeah.
So it's still got the same energy system with the single ATP and DNA and all that stuff. It's all very, very similar. So I think it's unlikely because the octopus is extremely similar to us. So that suggests a common origin to me. That I suppose the counter argument you could advance would be there's only one way to do life. So you could say that actually, given, because the laws of physics and chemistry are the same everywhere. So maybe DNA is the only way to do it. So that's the way it gets done.
Which is why they're so similar to us.
Yeah, so
although so alien as well.
Yeah, they're not though. You know, that's the thing about an octopus. That's why I'm surprised about it, because they're not that alien. They're very similar.
Now, Joe Rogan says that Earth has so many different life forms that it would be incredible to find something similar on a planet like Mars or Europa. Brian Cox believes that if we were to find anything on Mars or Europa, it would be single-celled just because of how long life on Earth was single-celled before it became multicellular life, like insects and plants.
Intelligence, I would guess, would be very rare, because it took so long on Earth to get there. And it was just slime. Like 3 billion years of slime.
They probably got intelligence.
That was it.
On the Joe Rogan Experience number 1465 featuring Tim Pool, Joe and Tim have a really deep UFO conversation. Joe Rogan starts his conversation by talking about how the Pentagon officially released 3 UFO videos captured by naval pilots. Now, Joe Rogan says the UFOs are such a weird subject because it's very widely dismissible. He explains that just because so many crazy people have talked about UFOs, that when there could be actual real evidence of a UFO, people are going to dismiss it because of the amount of crazy people who have talked about them.
But then when you see these videos and you see them performing these impossible tasks, like these things are moving in a way that we've never seen anything move before, flipping upside down and sideways, moving at insane rates of speed.
Imagine being able to build anything just by thinking about it. Meet Base 44, a complete AI creation.
Like, they don't know what these are.
What's interesting, though, is I was reading one of these stories, and they passively mentioned that the sighting was near a U.S. naval, like, technology station of some sort, like a top secret development. And I'm like...
That could be one of two things. Either it's developed by the people that are at that base, or they're monitoring the people that are at that base.
Tim Pool brings up a good point about the UFO footage that the Pentagon released. It is true that one of these sightings was near a naval technology center, but the Pentagon also said that the quote-unquote aircraft that they recorded displayed characteristics that are not in U.S. inventory or any foreign inventory that they are aware of, meaning that whatever these UFOs were, the Pentagon believes that they were not made on Earth. They also start to discuss the Manhattan Project and its relation to UFO sightings. The Manhattan Project was a secret U.S. research and development program during World War II that aimed to build the first nuclear weapons. It was led by the United States with support from the United Kingdom and Canada.
Manhattan Project, man. I mean, the U.S. has probably got some crazy... You know?
Could be, but the Manhattan Project was also coincidentally right after they started detonating bombs when the aliens started showing up.
That's what they think, right?
Yeah, well, that was when the bulk of U.S. sightings started jumping, and worldwide, I believe, too.
Now, there is a well-documented correlation between nuclear weapons and UFO sightings, particularly around nuclear facilities, test sites, and missile silos. While no definitive explanation exists, several theories attempt to explain this phenomenon. Some key observations include UFO sightings near nuclear sites. Since the late 1940s, UFOs have been reported near Los Alamos, Oak Ridge, and Hanford, where nuclear weapons were developed and stored. Reports from U.S. Air Force personnel claim that unidentified flying objects were seen hovering over nuclear missile sites. There have also been reported malfunctions and shutdowns of nuclear missiles. In 1967, at Malmstrom Air Force Base in Montana, a group of UFOs allegedly disabled 10 nuclear missiles. In 1980, at RAF Bentwaters in the United Kingdom, U.S. military personnel witnessed a UFO UFO near nuclear weapon storage. There have also been increased UFO sightings after nuclear tests. Major UFO waves occurred after significant nuclear detonations, including the Trinity test in 1945 and subsequent Cold War tests. Some theories on the correlation between UFO sightings and nuclear activity include extraterrestrial monitoring. Some speculate that UFOs are monitoring human nuclear capabilities, possibly to prevent self-destruction, advanced human technology. Others suggest these sightings could be secret military aircraft or drones, either domestic or foreign, interdimensional or psychological effects. Some theories propose that nuclear activity affects space-time or triggers psychological phenomena leading to UFO sightings.
Do you know about the O'Hare Airport sighting?
Which one's that?
So this was, I think, in like 06 at Chicago's International O'Hare. A UFO came down and hovered above, I can't remember which terminal it was. It hovered for a few minutes, I think, and then shot straight, punched a hole in the clouds. Everybody saw it happen. Now, I had just quit working at O'Hare around this time when the sighting happened, so I had friends who were still there. I had a friend tell me that when this UFO came down, people on Mannheim Road, which is the road on the side of O'Hare, got out of their cars, like just stopped the light, got up, and were looking and staring at it. And that the people who are working, where we worked for American Eagle Airlines, walked out of the rooms and were just staring at it float and then shoot up and punch a hole in the clouds. And you know what they said? Weather phenomenon.
The O'Hare UFO sighting occurred on November 7, 2006 at Chicago O'Hare International Airport and is one of the most well-documented UFO incidents in modern history. At around 4:15 p.m., a group of United Airlines employees reported seeing a dark, metallic, disc-shaped object hovering over gate C-17. The object was estimated to be about 6 to 24 feet in diameter and remained stationary for several minutes. Witnesses claimed the UFO suddenly shot upward at high speed, leaving behind a hole in the cloud cover that remained visible for some time. The Federal Aviation Administration dismissed the event, attributing it to weather phenomenon or a hole punch cloud, despite multiple eyewitness accounts. The FFA refused to investigate further and claimed that there were no radar detections of this object. Now, Tim Pool asks Joe Rogan why he thinks that there are so few actual real photos of UFOs, especially recently because of the access to cameras on our phones. Joe thinks it's because people are liars. He does acknowledge that even though people are liars, that doesn't mean that aliens aren't real. People just like to lie about seeing extraterrestrial things for attention. Joe also believes that it is very rare that aliens actually visit us. He brings up how uncommon it is for scientists to go to the Congo and study chimps.
Let me trip you out on that idea. We put decoys up for animals. Animals can't tell the difference. What if you've actually met a decoy person? You couldn't tell the difference.
Maybe it's you, bro.
Maybe it's me. That's right.
And that's why you're able to work so much.
Oh yeah, I'm a robot.
You don't get tired.
No.
So you're interested in news and disseminating factual evidence.
Because what I'm actually doing is collecting a database for the aliens. No, but I thought about this because I saw a photo on Reddit of a puffin, I think it's called, the bird, and they put up a fake puffin. And it's because, I think they're called puffins, it's because the birds don't like, nesting in places where they're alone. And so by putting the decoy there, the other birds would start coming. And like one bird showed up and was hanging out with the decoy. And I'm like, could you imagine, like, you see, like, we put duck decoys in the water, we do duck calls. And the duck's like, ooh, hey, fly honey, I'm gonna come over and check this out. And it's like a wood block. Could you imagine like seeing like a beautiful woman or someone you're attracted to and being like, ooh, look at that, and it's really like an alien decoy just to like probe you and like better understand you or something?
Well, the decoy, just the term decoy is weird because decoys are used for hunting. Like turkey, it's turkey season right now.
Yeah.
And the way most guys hunt for turkeys, they take a rubber turkey, you put that out in the middle of the field, and then you hide behind a bush with a shotgun and go bark, 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 bark. And then the turkeys like hear it and they come over and they try to get some, and then they get shot.
So what if you see some dude and or it's like you see it for you, it'd probably be a beautiful woman, you want to get that and then she's going like, hey, come over here, and you're like, oh, hey, me, and
then I get eaten.
No, they just take you up in the ship, probe you, and
these have been 5 of the craziest alien theories in Joe Rogan history. Let me know if you guys want to see a part 2, and in the meantime, make sure to subscribe with those post notifications on.
Want to start a podcast, but not sure how? Riverside?
Hey, some of those theories was out of pocket. I'm not gonna lie. Some of them made some sense. It was like I had to think about it for a second. But some of them shits was out of pocket. I'm not gonna lie. Like niggas was off of drugs for sure. All right. Let me see. The next one we got is unsettling possibilities regarding alien life. Now we're going darker than I think the third one. I mean, all alien conspiracies, but I think the third one's a little bit lighter after this one. All right. So let me get this real quick. So yeah, unsettling possibilities regarding alien life. Start this now.
In celebration of Spooky October and an entire coming month of creepy, mysterious science content, here are 10 unsettling possibilities regarding alien life.
Halloween time.
Number 10. There is no one else. To paraphrase Arthur C. Clarke, there either is other intelligent alien life in the universe, or there isn't, and the two possibilities are equally frightening. The one thing I've never discussed on this channel until now is the possibility that we might actually be alone, and there are no others anywhere in the universe. The odds are dramatically against this. We live in a universe that has 200 sextillion stars in it, the vast majority of which are in principle habitable. Sun-like stars are amongst the most common, and that's only within the observable universe. There could be vastly more beyond that horizon. So odds are we are not alone. But what if we are? What would that imply? That creates a different world from what we currently perceive. Earth would then violate the Copernican principle, and would then become the most important, privileged place in the entire universe. Here, magical chemistry happens that doesn't happen anywhere else in space or time. And the end result of that chemistry, us, would be the highest expression of life in the universe, and indeed would represent the universe perceiving and trying to understand itself. Think about that for a moment. The most unlikely thing in the universe just so happens to also be the universe's way of observing and understanding itself. That's not likely to be a coincidence. This is very different from being a random chance alien civilization among many others. This would be the ultimate in uniqueness in a universe that otherwise hates a one-off. In science, you always expect other examples, and that objects like asteroids are not unique, but part of a population. This works for civilizations as well. They can be rare for sure, or common, but the idea of only one ever really stretches plausibility to the point that one must naturally ask questions about it being intentional at that point. If that's the case, then we live in a universe that is so large that some of it, perhaps most of it, cannot be perceived, and thus is uselessly large and wasteful for the apparent intended task.
Like the Matrix theory?
The universe would then seem to be a thing born of complete utter madness, no matter what explanation you favor. Number 9. We live in a universe of machines. We are an altered natural species. A human of 20,000 years ago was in many ways very different from us. And it's not just our technology that sets us apart, but our collective ideas such as education, literacy, and so on that all revolutionized how we think and behave versus a time where none of that existed. But most markedly is our technology of today. Over the course of my life, I have seen much of the human race addict itself to a prosthetic brain, the cell phone. What was once a method of talking to people over wires has become a font of information at your fingertips, instant communications by multiple means, and entertainment. And this trend seems likely to continue. In the coming decades, we will see medical science move increasingly towards the direct incorporation of technology within the human body. This can come in forms such as brain-to-computer interfaces, but also things like creating artificial pancreases for diabetics that function through nanotechnological bloodstream machines, managing insulin levels by directly releasing it as needed. Or how about technological weight loss, where one needn't do a thing and the weight just melts away? There are many possibilities to be envisioned here, but we have come to a time where our constituent parts become gradually replaced as they wear out, such as with hip replacements. Eventually, this gets to the point that we transition to become, neuron by neuron, gradually over time,
They
a
were
machine
wrong.
ourselves. Imagine that. Born biological, only to die as a machine. But that's if death truly happens to machines. In that world, that which can be broken can be repaired and made to live again. Or backup copies can be made for an indefinite existence of sorts. You may be gone, but your memories and everything that made you who you are is archived and can be recalled at will. Or might some data be lost? To quote Frankenstein, it is with considerable difficulty that I remember the original era of my being. This leads to a universe where the end result of evolution of natural intelligence leads to the rise of machine intelligence. If this is the natural order of things, then it may be that machine civilizations vastly outnumber biological ones. Those machine civilizations may end up spawning successive, improved iterations of themselves, meaning machine descends from machine, and evolution asserts in a new controlled form under the guise of evolving technology. So I ask you this, all of this would imply an original biological civilization sparking the whole thing off. But what if we found a civilization for which there was no evidence of that? Rather, its lineage appears to have been machines all the way down.
EVE Online is a vast universe.
Number 8. The plea for help necrosignature. We tend to assume that first contact with an alien civilization will come in the form of a radio signal, but with the intent of saying hello and offering the opportunity to say hello back with a signal of our own. But we would be doing that from a world in some trouble, where nuclear war could end civilization, and mismanagement of the planet could eventually cause our outright extinction. This has led to the question of whether civilizations in general in the universe almost invariably go extinct a short time after they develop advanced technology. This creates a dilemma as far as SETI signals go. Would we as a civilization nearing its end think it a good idea to take a chance and fire out a distress signal? Such a signal may never be heard, or its recipients too far away to help evacuate the planet, or may be disinclined to do so. But at the same time, what would we have to lose doing that during our extinction event? This leads to the unsettling possibility that all intentional radio communication signals in the galaxy are distress calls, and that if we ever detect them, we will be hearing the death throes of an alien civilization that we are powerless to help. This may happen over and over, leading to a very disturbing universe of necrosignatures. Alien civilizations may no longer be defined by their current existence, but their extinction and what they left behind. The Milky Way may be a cemetery full of technological tombstones of past civilizations. Number 7. Von Neumann interference. One such technological tombstone could come in the form of von Neumann probes. These probes are envisioned to collect resources wherever they go and then use it to self-replicate. This process leads to exponential growth of the amount of probes, which can then fill the galaxy with the presence of an alien civilization's technology inside of a few million years at sublight speeds, a blink of an eye in a universe 13.8 billion years old. But with that comes a question of motives. Why station a probe in every star system in the galaxy? Science is a good answer to this. If you want a very complete picture of the galaxy, then this would provide for as complete a picture as you can get. But this also allows for some frightening possibilities, since such a probe could function as a 3D printer and produce not just copies of itself, but entire armies of vehicles that could fight a war and attack a planet. It could try to hack your computer systems from space, and even release EMPs until your civilization is reduced to a non-technological state. The presence of a close, more advanced alien civilization is never a good thing, regardless of the intent of that civilization. They are, by virtue of more advanced technology, in control and can do anything they want to an inhabited planet anytime they wish, which is a wholesale loss of control for that civilization, even if the alien civilization is altruistic in intentions. If they are not, then it only gets worse. Close aliens is always a bad thing, and if they're in your atmosphere with you, then that's the worst possible thing that can happen in any scenario. Number 6. Astrovirology. Life on Earth co-evolved with its viruses. Viruses have been with us since the start, and it's reasonable to assume that this is the natural order. Wherever there is life, there are viruses attacking it. But Earth's viruses are very specific things, and need not merely attack cells, but it needs to attack the right kind under the right chemical conditions. While some viruses on Earth can jump species, it happens under very special conditions. If you sneeze on a crocodile, it's probably not going to get sick. But there's a contentious idea out there that maybe, under the right conditions, viruses can generalize. Most researchers don't think this is the case, but it has been advanced that on a dying world, say Mars at the time it started drying up, where if it had life, members of that microbial ecosystem would have been adapting or going extinct on a large scale during that period. That might have forced the viruses that preyed on them to evolve to become generalized, in that they would have the ability to attack any cell they came across. That opens up the way for dead planets to be loaded with viruses that can attack explorers and confound any attempt at colonization, and raise the risk of returning explorers infecting Earth with a virus capable of wiping out most, if not all, life on this planet. A scary possibility, but not a very likely one, since if it were possible, then the planets themselves are always sneezing on each other, swapping rocks and impacts across geologic history. We would see such a thing in Martian meteorites, and we don't. And indeed, we probably wouldn't be here if it were the case. Number 5. The Overlord Civilization. Looks can be deceiving. When we look out into the universe, we see the Great Silence. There is so far no evidence that advanced alien civilizations have done much with the galaxy. Indeed, we see nothing at all inconsistent with the processes of nature. But there are many arguments to be made about why this is. Are alien civilizations simply hard to spot? Do they ever build giant megastructures or artificially arrange stars? Or don't they? And so on. But there is another option. Something or someone is stopping them all. This is the idea of the Overlord Civilization, where perhaps the first civilization to arise and settle the galaxy controls it, and never lets anyone get to a sufficient technological level to challenge them. They may not interfere with budding primitive civilizations, leaving them alone or allowing them to exist, but the moment they leave their star system to colonize another world, they are stopped from doing so, and either reset to an earlier technological state, absorbed entirely into the greater alien civilization, or put to extinction. Absence of evidence is not evidence of absence.
Things have gotten pretty expensive lately. I need to generate some additional income.
I found data annotation. I can work from my phone. I can work.
Number 4. We may have gotten very lucky. The galaxy is a mostly hostile place. Much of it is a deadly vacuum, dotted with giant, incredibly hot balls of fusion we know as stars. Stars are known to commonly host planets, but so far, none of those planets are quite like here. We live in a tiny bubble of habitability in a vast universe of hostility, and have found no other such bubble like this one. But we have found habitability. We see ice shell moons, like Europa and Enceladus, where the oceans beneath could harbor life. But it's not habitability as we know it for the most part. We have quite a selection of such moons that may hold liquid water oceans locked under the ice. But that's not Earth, at least most of it. Other worlds that once were like Earth, Venus and Mars, are both dead, having not been able to sustain the conditions for liquid water long term as Earth has. And then there are questions, such as whether life could have evolved on this world if we didn't have a moon, and a host of other questions that may make our planet very special indeed, and that most of the rest of the habitable planets in the galaxy aren't anything close to as nice as this one, even if they are habitable. This leads to a number of scenarios. What of a planet like Earth that is facing impending doom, such as the baking of the planet by its ever-brightening host star? That lies in our own future, and there may be civilizations out there at that point, and desperately doing whatever they can to keep their world cool, or being evacuated from it entirely to settle someplace else. Or water worlds with civilizations that are locked into their aquatic environment without the physiology needed to harness fire and build technology. We could live in a universe where intelligence is moderately common, but more often than not, locked in and unable to leave its home world. So the question here is that if we venture into the galaxy and explore and start running into these civilizations, do we liberate them, or let nature take its course? And how is it we got this lucky? Number 3. They seeded Earth with life.
Who is they? Aliens?
The origins of life on Earth are obscure. It's not clear how a non-living chemical process can evolve into life itself. While it seems likely that we'll eventually understand this process and by proxy know if it's a straightforward affair that must happen all over the universe, or if it's a rare set of circumstances where it can only seldom happen. But the idea has been floated that it may be so rare of an occurrence that some process must spread it across the universe.
Maybe it's a factor
This has been advanced as interstellar panspermia, where rocks can travel for eons carrying dormant life, and then seed it wherever it happens to fall. But it seems unlikely that life could hold on long enough to cross interstellar distances. But where it can happen is if it's artificially preserved and protected by an alien civilization. This could come in 2 ways, intentional and unintentional. The unintentional route is if an alien civilization visited early Earth and accidentally infected it with their microbes, which are now our microbes. They may have been passing through and took a look around at an interesting planet that may have life developing on it, but found that it did not, but in the process accidentally deposited life on it that would someday evolve into a civilization that likes cell phones, cat videos, and donuts. The other option is if they did it intentionally and saw some value or imperative to spread life anywhere it could get a foothold. This is more like gardening, where you plant beans where there are no beans, and voila, you've got beans. They might plant the seed and periodically drop in to see how it's doing until it becomes a civilization, and then they make proper contact and intelligence thus pervades the universe. Or they may have gone extinct over the vast amount of time, and the life they spread is their legacy. And this leads to an odd option within SETI. Such a civilization could have encoded a message in the DNA of life on Earth. DNA is an extremely complex and extensive data storage system, so finding such an unnatural marker within it is difficult but possible. Perhaps the proof of life out there was within ourselves the whole time. Number 2. The alien simulation scenario. Within philosophy, a question has long been posed that asks if we live in some kind of simulation rather than an actual reality. This has recently gained popularity in the form of simulation theory, the most prominent form of which is the idea of an ancestor simulation. This is where a civilization creates a simulation of its own past, presumably to see what the universe was once like, from a vantage point in the far future. Perhaps they wanted to experience what it is like to be fully human again, or even try to reconstruct lost parts of their own history. Some ideas even go so far as to the universe almost certainly being a simulation of this type, though I think that's stretching things a bit. But within the simulation theory idea, there is one that is rather unsettling. In such a universe, if left to develop, it wouldn't just produce the civilization in question, but others as a byproduct. It would be one relevant civilization, and a bunch of other redundant ones the simulators may not even be aware of, but know can hypothetically occur. Maybe this is how they study alien civilizations. But this also may explain the Great Silence, in that the simulators simply make only one civilization and no others are allowed to exist out of a sense of ethics. But if that's not the case, and civilizations can arise on more than one planet in the simulation, which the apparent size of the universe would allow, then we could be an unwitting byproduct living in an alien civilization's ancestor simulation. Number 1.
You're not going to believe what happened. Tell me everything. I'll show you on Monday.com. So I started the biggest initiative of
they may walk among us. The biggest problem with contemplating alien life is ambiguity.
They chill.
At a distance of light years, while you could reasonably say we found a truly alien civilization sending us a radio signal, the more likely scenario is that it will actually be ambiguous at first. A detection of something that could be a technosignature, but might just as easily be something nature is doing. This already happens. We have odd occurrences like KIC 8462852 or Cebulski star that might be something aliens are doing, or they may be something going on in nature that we weren't aware was possible. This problem gets worse though if the aliens are close to you. There you may never be able to prove that they are truly alien, even if what appears to be an alien spacecraft lands on your lawn and something steps out and announces it's an alien. The stumbling blocks here are many. The first is that Earth is a very dynamic world that loves to erase evidence of what's happened on it in the past. There are entire species of animal, for example, that we will never know about because the circumstances needed to preserve them in the fossil record simply didn't happen, or they are locked up in layers of rock that never gets exposed to human eyes. That leaves open a situation where a prior technological civilization could have arose here millions of years ago, for which no traces exist any longer, having long ago subducted under Earth's crust or otherwise weathered away. While there is no indication of this, and it seems unlikely, it can't be ruled out. That leads to the thinking that if you did find an alien artifact near Earth, then you'd have much difficulty determining if it was truly of alien origin, since a prior technological civilization here that left the planet for space solves the time and distance problem of crossing space-time better than the notion of an alien civilization doing it. The other issue is even more speculative, but much worse. Any alien civilization that had the technology to come here would likely have a full understanding and command of genetics. That means they could essentially 3D print out any creature they want on demand. This could range from printing out a representative of the alien civilization for first contact, or custom creatures suited for specific environments and conditions. But it also opens up the possibility of printing out a human, entirely indistinguishable from the real thing. You could bump into an alien at the grocery store and never know it. Unlikely, but not impossible. Thanks for listening. I am futurist and science fiction author John Michael Gautier, currently addressing those detractors in the comments that think I'm an alien. I have no such recollection.
That was a good one. It was losing me at points, I'm not gonna lie. Unsettling for sure. It was definitely trying to get it around there. It's pretty interesting, some of the ideas, like the theories I've never heard of. Some of them were like combinations, some of them I've heard, but like not from this type of point of view. So yeah, that was a pretty good one. And then we have one more alien video. Let me see. So I went with a classic one. We got this alien base on the moon. I don't really know too much about it, but I do know like alien base on the moon. I feel like I heard a lot of shit about aliens in the moon. Figured just do this one.
When Ingo Swann released his book titled Penetration in 1998, he claimed to be a...
Hey,
yo! Hey, yo!
Yo, you gotta retitle that book, bro.
Psychic who was employed by the CIA to remote view the dark side of the moon, specifically to look for alien presence.
Hold up. So he got a book named Penetration about the dark side of the moon. Niggas is... I don't even know.
Sounded like science fiction, but in 2006, when the CIA started releasing documents on the Stargate project, Swann's participation in the program was confirmed. When Swann was asked about the existence of extraterrestrials, he said not only were they already here, but they are building something on the far side of the moon. And, according to Swann, these aliens aren't friendly. Let's find out why.
Oh shit, nigga, no, what the fuck? How did nigga know that?
When Ingo Swann was a child, his family noticed he had psychic potential. When When he got older, he wanted to explore this talent, so he began volunteering for experiments in ESP. At first, researchers tested Swan to see if he could influence plants with mental activity, or alter the temperature of an environment using his mind. And Swan was successful enough that more and more scientists became interested in him. But it was a few years later where Ingo Swann would find his specialty. In the early 1970s, Swann was part of a study for the American Society of Psychical Research, and this study involved Swann sitting in a chair and attempting to project his consciousness into sealed boxes, which contained symbols that Swann would try to read. During one experiment, he was asked to see what he saw inside of a box, and Swann said he saw nothing, just darkness. The researcher was disappointed and said, "Oh, that's too bad, let's try something else." Swann said, "No, I see darkness because the light bulb inside the box is burnt out." The researcher was puzzled. He walked over to the box, opened it, and sure enough, the light was out, and a star was born.
Imagine being able to build anything, for any reason, in any style, at any scale, just by thinking about it. Meet
So Raven. Nigga think he Jean Grey.
Ingo Swann's success in these early experiments got the attention of the Stanford Research Institute. You might remember the SRI from our Project Stargate video, which I'll link below. SRI had been remote viewing places around the world for years, but once they found Ingo Swann, who was extremely successful at this, they wondered if he could remote view other places in the solar system. There was an experiment in 1973 where Ingo Swann was asked to project his consciousness to the planet Jupiter. At first, Swann rejected the idea. Ingo Swann never wanted to remote view anything that couldn't be confirmed. There are plenty of frauds who claim to have psychic abilities, and Swann valued his reputation. He didn't see any value in going to Jupiter if his observations couldn't be confirmed. But the researchers at SRI told Swann Jupiter was chosen because NASA had probes on the way there right now. So Swann agreed, and he made a lot of observations about Jupiter that the Pioneer probes soon confirmed. He saw a hydrogen mantle, rotating storms like cyclones. He mentioned high infrared readings, the colors of the clouds, and ice crystals in the atmosphere.
The probes confirmed all of this?
They did. Skeptics will say all these observations could be deduced, like, of course, Jupiter has violent storms, we can see them. Same with the color of clouds, infrared, and atmospheric ice crystals. Even if we can't see this stuff, we can deduce that they're there. But Swann saw something else, something new. He said he saw a ring around Jupiter, just like Saturn's ring. But Jupiter's ring, according to Swann, was much smaller than Saturn's and closer to the planet. He said it was made up of dust and tiny asteroids. This was not something we could see from Earth, or even assume was there.
Did the probes see the ring?
The Pioneer probes in 1973 and 1974 did not see a faint ring around Jupiter.
Oh.
But when Voyager 1 passed by Jupiter in 1979...
Tell me there was a ring.
There was a ring.
Yahtzee!
This nigga really that so Raven.
I am not this body in terms of consciousness, and consciousness can go places where the body cannot.
What do you do when a nigga says that to you? What's your response? My consciousness goes beyond the physical planes of this reality, like.
Ingo Swann was so accurate as a remote viewer that people began to take notice, specifically the United States government.
Of course.
In March 1975, Ingo Swann received a call at 3 in the morning. He was told to go to Washington and visit the Museum of Natural History. There he should stand near the elephant in the central rotunda at noon. So he does. Right on schedule, a military
ability is to teleport, and like I break down my molecular structure from one area and completely relocate it to another cosmos and then re-put it together in another part of the world. Like, instead of saying teleport, my nigga.
Looking man approaches him and hands him a card. It reads, "Do not speak or ask questions. This is for our safety as well as yours. Please follow me." He's led to a car and seated next to another military-looking man, and in his book he calls these guys the twins. And twin number 2 hands him another card. It reads, "Please do not speak. We need to search you for listening devices." They do, and he's handed one final card. "We would like your help on a project suited to your talent. Are you comfortable in a helicopter?" Well, Swann takes a long moment, finally nods. The twins take the cards from Ingo Swann's hand, then a bag is placed over his head, and the car speeds away. Though Ingo Swann couldn't see, he felt that he was driven around in circles. Eventually, he's led from the car where he hears a helicopter spinning up. His face still shrouded, he's buckled in and flown to a location in or near Washington, D.C. When the helicopter lands, Swann is led to a quiet building and then into an elevator. The doors open and the bag is finally removed. Swann blinks his eyes, adjusting to the light. Then a kindly-looking man introduces himself as Mr. Axelrod. Ingo Swann is obviously nervous, and Mr. Axelrod sees this. He smiles.
They gotta pause, bro.
Hey, yo!
What is with some of these titles, bro? First we got Penetration, now we got Axelrod.
Miles tells him not to worry, that he's in no danger, and offers him a cigar. Swann gladly takes one. It's his brand. The men go to an office, sit and enjoy a cigar where Mr. Axelrod makes a proposal. Axelrod says he represents a group who would like Swann to participate in a remote viewing project. For his effort, he would be paid $1,000 a day in cash, which in today's money is over $6,000 a day.
Inflation, huh?
He gets paid to watch some shit. It sounds too good to be true.
Yep.
Are we gonna talk about the Federal Reserve and what a scam it is?
Not in this video.
Audit the Fed!
Okay, settle down. So, Ingo Swann really needs the money, but to get it, there are a few catches. First, he can't reveal any of this to anyone, and can't speak of it for at least 10 years. The other catch is for the next few days, Swann isn't to leave the facility. He'll be provided with a comfortable room, TV, a gym, swimming pool, and anything he needs, but if he takes the job, he stays on site under constant surveillance. Now, Ingo Swann is quiet for a while. As crazy as the past few years have been, he's never been through anything like this. Mysterious calls in the middle of the night, clandestine meetings, subterranean facilities, and now a kind but strange man offers him a lot of cash for an unknown mission. Axelrod sees Swann processing all of this and finally asks if he agrees to the terms. Swann nods that he does. Axelrod puts out his cigar, shakes Swann's hand, and says, "Good, get some rest. Tomorrow, we begin."
This is your brain when you're struggling to focus. And this is your brain when you're in the zone. But getting in the zone and staying there,
They're off of crack.
And it has very distinct features of a satellite dish. It's got the dish itself, the crater shape. It's got a long spike that appears to come out of the middle. All sorts of stuff that looks exactly like a satellite dish on Earth looks.
Nigga, what am I looking at?
The next morning, Axelrod tells Ingo Swann that he'll be remote viewing the moon. And Swann is confused by this, but Axelrod reminds him,
no questions.
Right. And Swann is given a list of coordinates and goes through them one by one. Some locations, he doesn't see anything, but others he was able to view large cliffs, see craters, dunes of white powder, all the things you'd expect to see on the moon. Finally, Swann comes across something interesting and confusing. He describes seeing tracks on the surface, tracks that seem to have been made by tractors or some kind of machinery. He sees patterns that look like they were made by wind, even though the moon has no atmosphere.
Supposedly.
Supposedly. Swann gets the sense that there is atmosphere there. Then Swann moves into a crater which is filled with a green haze. Something is generating light, and Swann notes that the light is diffused. And diffused light isn't possible on the moon. You need an atmosphere to scatter the light, so if it's not the atmosphere, what is it? He moves closer to the light. Swann sees something that looks like an airfield. He describes large structures like hangars, roads, towers, and machinery. Across craters and chasms, there are bridges, evidence of a lot of activity, industrial activity. Cut into the rocks are perfectly round holes, like they were dug with large earth-moving equipment. He moves to a different location and sees some structures emitting light of all different colors. Swann goes in for a closer look. The domes have windows, and even though the area was dark, he could see a fine mist inside the structures and that same eerie green glow. Swann moves closer. He goes right up to the windows. Inside, he describes humanoid figures that look almost like us. He describes this as an area of high activity. Whoever or whatever these beings are, they're very busy, and Swann continues to observe, describing everything he sees. Suddenly, two of the beings, then three, then a dozen, then more, they just stop. They turn to the window where Swann has projected himself. This makes Swann very nervous. He says, "They see me." Then calmly but urgently, Axelrod says, come back now." Swann says, "They're pointing at me." Axelrod tells Swann firmly, "Please come back quickly away from that place." Swan wills his consciousness back and slowly opens his eyes. Finally, he turns to Axelrod and says, "You already know they're psychic, don't you?" Axelrod takes a deep breath and says, "The experiment is over. It's time for you to go home."
Neil and Buzz were on the lunar surface. Neil switched to the medical channel and spoke directly with the chief medical officer, saying, "They're here, they're parked on the side of the crater, they're watching us."
Though Ingo Swan's moon experiment was over, Mr. Axelrod and the secret organization wasn't quite finished with him. About 6 months after leaving Washington, D.C., Swan was in a supermarket. While doing some grocery shopping, he spotted a stunning woman. He describes her as one of the most beautiful women he'd ever seen.
What was she wearing?
Don't be creepy.
Hello, I'm asking for science.
Well, Swan says she was barely wearing anything at all. Short shorts, bikini top, and the tallest high heels he'd ever seen.
Heels tall, bikini small. She said she liked the ocean.
Excuse me?
LL Cool J, I'm going back to Cali.
I don't think so.
Nice.
Anyway, Swan was obviously very taken with this woman because the chapter in his book, It's Barely Safe for Work, he says when he saw her, he felt a wave of electricity going through him and felt tingling all over his body. Suddenly, he felt the hair on the back of his neck stand up, and in that moment, he had the distinct feeling that she was an extraterrestrial. Now, Swan was very aware of how ridiculous this sounded, and he was about to chalk it up to him simply being smitten at the sight of her. But then he turned around and saw the twins from the moon experiment. So he panics and runs out of the store. But later that evening, he receives a phone call, and he's told to fly to New York immediately and be in Grand Central Station the next morning and wait for contact. Of course, he goes. When he gets to Grand Central, he sees one of the twins standing near a payphone. He gestures at Swan to come over. The phone rings. It's Mr. Axelrod. Axelrod asks all kinds of questions about his interaction with the woman, and Swan relays the story. At first, Axelrod is suspicious. He demands to know if he knows her, if she saw him, if she might be following him. Now, Swan doesn't understand any of this, and he starts to become frightened. Tells Axelrod he's never seen her before and has never had any contact with her. Now, finally, Axelrod tells Swan, just stay away from her. Swan asks who she is. Axelrod says all you need to know is that she's very dangerous. Swan says he understands, and they chat for a while. And Axelrod asks him how his remote viewing success rate is doing. Swan says he's almost 65% accurate, but not quite there. So Axelrod says, when you get to 65%, write the number 65 on a note on your desk and leave it there. Tell no one, we'll be in touch. And just like that, Axelrod hangs up. And Ingo Swan doesn't hear from Axelrod for a year, but he finally gets his remote viewing success rate to 65%. And just as he was instructed, he writes the number on a slip of paper and places it on his desk and goes home for the night. Now, even though his office is locked and nobody knows the code, when he gets in the following morning, the note is gone. And on his desk is what looks like a light dusting of powder. And in the powder, someone scribbled 2 words, expect contact. A few days after Ingo Swan was told to expect contact, he was heading to the university cafeteria when Mr. Axelrod appeared. Axelrod walked right up to Ingo Swan, shook his hand, and asked if he could get away for 3 or 4 days. Swan said sure, and asked where they were going. Axelrod smiled at him and asked, have you ever seen a UFO?
Holy shit!
This game, you're not ready for it.
Active UFO. Yeah, out of commission one.
That NBC keep it sound outer spacey, doesn't it? Do you hear that? That whistling sound?
The private jet landed a few hours later. Ingo Swan wasn't told where they were, but they had been flying due north for hours, so he assumed this was Alaska. It was the middle of the night and very dark and desolate. Mr. Axelrod, the twins, and Ingo Swan then climbed into an unmarked van. Swan was given a thermalized jumpsuit and asked to remove everything metal. They drove 2 hours through winding mountain roads before stopping under a group of pine trees. Axelrod said that it's very important that we're as quiet as possible. It's a 45-minute hike to their destination, and they can't talk or make any noise whatsoever. Swan nodded in agreement, and they ventured out into the wilderness. The twins were wearing what Swan thought to be night vision goggles because he could barely see a few feet in front of him. In fact, during some parts of the hike, he had to be led by the arm so he wouldn't fall into a creek or a hole or stumble over unsteady ground. They finally arrived at the edge of a lake, When Swan asked what he was supposed to do, Axelrod whispered that he should just observe and observe in complete silence, and also to be as still as possible. Axelrod said they detect heat, noise, and motion like mad. Swan's eyes went wide and he mouthed the word, "They?" Axelrod just brought his finger to his lips as if to say, "Shh." So, the four men sat in silence for a long while until one of the twins made some kind of hand gesture. Axelrod said, "It's begun." At first, Swan didn't see anything, just a fog coming off the lake. But slowly the fog began to change. Swan said the fog was emitting light, at first neon blue, which slowly changed what he called angry purple. The fog started getting thicker and thicker, and then up from the lake, a triangle-shaped craft emerged. It was about 90 feet wide and emitted a pulsing hum. Suddenly, beams of light were shooting from the craft, hitting different locations around the area. One of the twins shouted, "We have to move." So they did. Then a beam of energy hit the area where the men were, and Swan remembers hearing a loud crack like lightning. And Swan was so stunned he couldn't move. He had to actually be dragged from the area. And Swan looked over his shoulder and saw water from the lake somehow being pulled into the craft. He described it as a reverse waterfall. And on the drive back, everyone was completely silent. Swan just stared out the window, trying to absorb everything he just saw, piece it together. When the van arrived at the airport, the sun was starting to come up. Swan said, "I finally know what's going on." Axelrod said, "Go on." Swan said confidently, "This was an unmanned drone." And Axelrod, like always, never confirmed or rejected Swan's ideas. He simply asked Swan to continue. Swan said, "It's a resupply mission. They're mining the moon and they need our water." Axelrod smiled at this. He didn't agree, but he didn't disagree either. Axelrod shook Swan's hand, thanked him, and gestured toward a waiting plane. Ingo Swan would be flying back alone, and he never saw Axelrod or the twins ever again. Ingo Swan kept his word and didn't speak of any of these events for years. He eventually published a full account of the story in his book Penetration, which I'll link below. It's a great book. Ingo Swan tells the story with a lot of flair. So if you're interested in stories like this, it's a must-read. But...
Oh, here we go.
But how much of the story is true?
I hate this part.
I know, but we have to do it.
Yeah, I know.
So let's break down Ingo Swan's story into its parts and see if we can figure out what really happened. We've got the Jupiter mission, the moon mission, the extraterrestrial woman, and the UFO encounter. So let's start with the woman in the supermarket. Ingo Swan felt that this woman was an alien. He thought that maybe an alien or android made to look like an attractive woman was following him. Now, this was the chapter that was most difficult for me to believe.
So he didn't see a sexy E.T.?
I think he saw the woman, but she was probably human. He was under surveillance by the twins, who we now know to be CIA operatives. I think the most logical explanation is that she was a Soviet spy.
Honeypot!
Yeah, I think so. This was the 1970s, and during this time, the United States and Soviet Union were in the middle of what you might call a psychic arms race. We know this from CIA records. We also know that the US was full of Soviet spies. Next, the UFO encounter. This was another tough one for me. It was just a very tidy story. Mr. Axelrod knew exactly where it would appear, how it operated, what it would be doing. I mean, if he wanted Swan to confirm something about the craft, I think he could have done that remotely. I mean, if Ingo Swan could put his consciousness on Jupiter, he can certainly go to Alaska. And in his book, Swan describes light rays shooting from the UFO that actually destroyed pine trees and even killed animals. I think this is something that could be confirmed pretty easily, but there's no follow-up on it. Now, as for Jupiter, subsequent observations and probes to the planet confirmed a lot of what Ingo Swan said, and his discovery of Jupiter's rings is really a compelling story. We'd never seen those before, and they were confirmed by Voyager in 1979 and photographed by the New Horizons mission in 2007. Finally, the moon. And this is where things get really strange. The CIA had remote viewers projecting to Jupiter, Mars, and the moon. Even though the remote viewers' reports were highly classified, they're not any longer, and their reports are remarkably similar. The problem with the moon is that the US government simply will not allow us to confirm the details. There are reports of astronauts hearing signals coming from the moon, but those signals are dismissed as interference. We have pictures of what look like huge structures on the moon, but the pictures are fuzzy and can easily be refuted by skeptics as rock formations.
What about pictures of the far side of the moon?
Well, NASA has plenty of those. but they're very stingy with what they release to the public. And if NASA won't tell us what's happening up there, we're gonna fill in the blanks ourselves.
To say that I love this job is an understatement.
I've been on the data annotation platform for about 1.5 years now, and it's
It's an indisputable fact that Ingo Swann was part of secret government experiments for years. If you search the CIA website, there are hundreds of documents that confirm this. And everyone who worked with Ingo Swann 100% believed he was telling the truth about everything he saw. Now, Swann admitted that he got things wrong plenty of times and was always reluctant to remote view places that couldn't be confirmed. So I don't think he's a liar or a fraud or a hoaxer, but did he really see the things he described? Only you can answer that. If you don't believe in remote viewing, then the answer is easy. No, none of this could be real. These are just stories created by someone with an incredible imagination. But if you do believe in remote viewing, as the US government certainly does, then Ingo Swann might have revealed the most important discovery of humankind, that we are not alone. The best stories are the ones that make you reevaluate everything you've been taught, that make you question every truth you've come to believe. The story of Ingo Swann is one of these. Now, after researching Ingo Swann, I'm left with more questions than answers. But if enough of us keep asking these questions, one day, maybe hundreds of years from now, or maybe tomorrow, we'll finally learn the truth. And the truth, whether fantastic or mundane, that's all we want. Thanks so much for hanging out with me today. My name is AJ, that's Hecklefish. This has been the Y-Files. If you had fun or learned anything, do me a favor and like, subscribe, comment, and share.
Disprove if this nigga was lying or not. But they had a lot of evidence of his shit being true from the Jupiter shit and CIA shit. And that nigga said it was mining on the moon and stealing water from the earth. So, I don't know. He might be telling the truth. I don't know. That's crazy. And they couldn't really disprove a lot of the other shit too. And they did have the remote viewing thing for the moon. They said that too. Yeah, that's crazy. I was like, so those are all the little alien videos it's gonna do today. About to do a little bit of a gaming live stream in a minute, but